Alright, and welcome to a little demonstration of slightly different instrument. This is the Korg PS3100. I'm in the middle of a busy store right now, so it's going to be a little bit noisy kind of in the background, so I apologize for that. But I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of show you some of the features of this sort of legendary and vintage synthesizer here. Just a little starting out point, we're going to go through kind of the front panel here of the Korg PS3100 and just kind of introduce you into the different sections before we start going in and making some adjustments and allowing you to hear some of the tones. So over there on the far left, and I'll kind of point to it right over here, right there, we have the temperament adjustment, and we'll pop over to a close-up of that here shortly. And the temperament adjustment is going to actually allow you to tune the Korg PS3100 to different scales. So normally what we're used to in the Western world is diatonic scales, but you can also tune to other scales. There's mean temperament is one of the ones that's listed in the manual, and I also believe just intonation is also in there as well. So you do have several options here for adjusting the temperament of this instrument. One interesting thing to note about this instrument here is that every key on the keyboard has its own voice. So it is one of the first truly polyphonic synthesizers. So I'm going to demonstrate that here by playing a chord. So here we go, 3 notes. There we are. And I can even do 5 notes if I want. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 notes playing at the same time. Most synthesizers that you see this way, or in this particular format, are in general monophonic, but this one happens to be polyphonic. So there's actually one voice for every single key on this keyboard. Very interesting feature and very, very nice when you want to go in and make some interesting sounds. Especially with the sample and hold, which we'll see that a little bit later. So moving on from the temperament adjustment, we're going to go over to the next section over here, second from the left, right over here. We have the signal generator, and that is where our oscillators are. We have several different waveforms available to us. We have triangle. Let me actually come around here so I can sort of show you where I'm pointing to. So I'm going to reach over here, and there we go. So you can switch this knob here, and that allows you to switch through the different waveforms that are available to you. Immediately below that, see that, we have pulse width modulation intensity, and then we have fine-tuning adjustments as well as coarse, and then on the bottom we can switch the different octaves. Immediately below the signal generator section, we have the modulation section for the oscillators. That's going to allow us to route modulation generator 1, which is over here in the center, to modulate the oscillators here. So pretty interesting little setup here. So you have your own dedicated modulation source that's going to be letting you frequency modulate. And there's a simple switch that allows you to flip it on or off, and that's this little orange switch. So I can switch it to on, or I can switch it to off, whichever I want to do. There's also a reverse switch over here, so in case I want to switch the direction of the modulation going to pitch of the oscillators, then I can do that. Fairly interesting little setup. Moving right along, let's go to the next section. That is the dynamic low-pass filters. You have your basic controls in this section. For the low-pass filters, you have cutoff frequency on the top, and then of course you have peak, which is also called resonance, so you can adjust the resonance on this filter. And then below that there's a couple of other features which I'm a little bit rusty on. One of them is labeled keyboard filter balance, and then the one below that is expand. I'm not going to actually go into those two because I didn't do enough studying on those two, but they essentially allow you to adjust the way that the filter behaves along the span of the keyboard. So for the purposes of our demo, we're not actually going to be looking at that particular feature. We're going to be looking at some other more exciting kind of stuff. Right below the filter section, we have a modulation section that's directly related to the frequency cutoff. So this little section down here is also routed to modulation generator number 1, which is right there, and it will allow you to set how much of that modulation source is going to be routed to the filter. You may have noticed as well, as we were going through the first signal generator section and modulation, there was a couple of knobs down here, and I may zoom in a little bit so you can get a shot of those. And those allow you to set different modulation source, so you can use an external CV signal, or you can use the general envelope generator, which is more towards the center of the keyboard, to route to the pitch or also to the filter. So there you go. And again, that's these two along the bottom as well. Cool. Well, moving right along, we're going into the envelope modifier section, which is the third section right here, or fourth section, I guess, if you count the temperament adjustment. And the envelope modifiers section is going to allow you to adjust the sound that you're playing. So I'll demonstrate that. So if I play a sound, have my basic sound, and then if I increase the attack time, it might take a little bit longer to come in. Maybe a little bit too long. Eventually it'll come in. Not quite there. Let me bring it down a little bit. There, you can hear it. Okay. So that's with the attack at about 5. If I bring it all the way down to 0, get a little choppy kind of sound, more like a harpsichord or something like that. Immediately below that, you have the decay time, and then also the sustain level. So if I adjust these, I can change the way my sound evolves. There you go. So you have a fairly versatile envelope modifier here available to you to shape your sound. And there's several different modes that you can adjust this to as well. There's a damped mode, half D, and release. I may go into a little zoomed in portion right there so you can see that a little bit better. So you have damped, half D, and half damped, I guess, and release. And then immediately to the right of that, you have a keyboard hold switch. So there you go. Immediately to the right of that, you have the resonator section. This is a very unique section over here. It's a set of 3 resonating filters. The top dial is going to allow you to set the amount of resonance that's going to be applied to the final output. And then, of course, these are going to be the frequencies of each of the resonating filters. So you have regular filter and resonant filters as well that you can apply to your sound, just for more versatility and more combinations of sounds. This is also possible to be modulated. Right here, there's a little section right there that says that you can adjust the modulation intensity right there. So if I bring this all the way to the top, then that's going to increase the modulation amount going to there. And this one's a little bit different. This one's actually coming from modulation generator number 2, which if you look at the front panel, modulation generator 1, modulation generator 2, and this is just a basic sine wave. Looks like right there. Okay, so we've done these few sections here, and now we're going to move on to the next section and just kind of get a little overview of some of this stuff. Oh, but before I go on, I wanted to show you this, the sample and hold clock frequency. This is going to come into play a little bit later, but I just wanted you to note that I am kind of pointing this out. I'm not skipping it or anything, but we'll come back and do a little demonstration of how that works here a little bit later. Moving on to the modulation section. This is our modulation generator. You have your choice of several different waveforms here. Triangle all the way on the far counterclockwise position. Then you have a saw 1, saw 2. You have rectangle wave, pink noise, and white noise as well. At the very bottom of this, you have the frequency. So this will allow you to adjust the frequency. If you have a waveform here, you can adjust how fast or slow the frequency of your waveform is going to go. And again, modulation generator number 1 is going to be able to be sent to the low pass filter that's available here to you, as well as the oscillator frequency. So pretty cool stuff. All right, let's move along to modulation generator 2. Not really very many parameters to adjust here other than frequency, so you can adjust the amount of this. Or not the amount, but the frequency is what I meant. So you can adjust the frequency amount, or the frequency of the modulation generator. So you can do it very fast, or you can do it very slow. And again, modulation generator number 2 is going to be able to be routed here to the resonating filters just by default. And then there is a patch bay that's over here on the right hand side that will kind of open up some of the capabilities of the synthesizer. Let's keep going and look at the general envelope generator right here. It's got 5 different modes. There you go. And I'm not going to go into the 5 different modes, but I'm going to mention that since you can use this to as a second modulation source found over here, you can actually adjust the delay amount, the attack amount, and the release amount. So essentially this is a third modulation source that you can use to modify your sounds as you go along. And then moving right along to voltage processors right here. These essentially are going to allow you to adjust how much of the voltages going to the control wheel or the modulation wheel are going to be modified. So you can do it all the way from -5, that's all the way in the counterclockwise position, to all the way to +5 in the full clockwise position. And basically you tell it, okay, what do I want the bottom of the range to be? If I want the bottom of the range to be -5, then I adjust this one all the way down to -5. And if I want the very top of that modulation amount to be +5, then I would put it all the way in the clockwise position. But these can come into play later on when you're patching, because these voltage processors don't necessarily have to be routed to the modulation wheel. They can actually be routed to other things, but you have to manually patch them into some of those others. So that covers our voltage processors. You may have noticed a couple switches here along the top. These switches are going to allow you to turn on certain parameters up here. For instance, here you have amplitude modulation, so you can turn that on and then amplitude modulate your sound, so you can add tremolo to your sound. The ensemble feature, in the manual, it describes it as giving it a more rich sound, and it is exactly what it does. I wouldn't necessarily call it a filter or flange or anything like that, but when you hear it, you'll notice that it definitely enriches the sound. So here we go. Here's our basic sound. And then we flip ensemble on. It's almost like a light chorus, at least to my ears, that's what it sounds like. Immediately to the right of that, you're going to be able to set whether these 2 VCAs are going to be turned on or off. That's these 2 switches right here. And then moving right along, we have the keyboard volume balance. So this dial is essentially going to allow you to set whether the sound is going to go from quiet to loud, or from loud to quiet, or anywhere in between, if that makes sense. So if I have it in the 0 position, there should be equal volume all the way up and down the keyboard. But if I do this, then it should be weighted. You hear how it's getting louder as we go up the octaves, and if I flip it all the way in the opposite direction, actually that one sounds a little bit more like the other one. And there is actually a little waveform here that kind of gives away what the volume should be. So it actually goes from quiet to loud in the total clockwise position. So this should be quiet, getting louder, loudest right there. And then in the opposite direction, we actually have the opposite behavior, so it should go quiet and then louder. Now the filter is coming into play there, so it does give it a little more muffled sound, because you can actually adjust how the filter behaves over the span of the keyboard as well, so sometimes that may interfere with that. So if I were to adjust my keyboard balance to 0, I might get a little better representation of that. Final volume is going to be your final output volume, going out to your mixer, which I have patched right here. And then going over to phone volume, this is going to be for the headphones. And then direct volume is going to be the direct volume out. You have 3 outputs over here on the far right. You have a final out, phones out, and a direct out. In the manual, it also outlines a process where you can create special stereo type effects by patching one cable out of the direct out and one cable out of the final out, sending each one to a different speaker, and then getting a sort of a stereoscopic type effect, which was fairly big back in the 70s. But you can still kind of create that kind of effect if you want to. If you wanted to maybe hook this up to your audio interface and input both of these, you could create a very interesting kind of sound coming out of here.